Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys. Section 14. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, A Midsummer Ramble Through the Dolomites. Chapter 6. Auronzo and Buona, Part 1. The view of Cadore upon which one looks back from the bend of the road, half a mile out of the town on the way to Colazzo, and again from the Ponte della Molina about another mile farther on, is one of the finest of all its kind in all this part of Tyrol. At the same time, it has in it very little of the Tyrolean element. Pictorially speaking, it is a purely Italian subject, majestic, harmonious, classical, with just sufficient sternness in the mountain forms to give it sublimity, but with no outlines abrupt or fantastic enough to disturb the scenic repose of the composition. In the foreground we have the ravine of the Molina spanned by a picturesque old bridge, at the farther end of which a tiny chapel clings to an overhanging ledge of cliff. In the middle distance, seen across an intervening chasm of misty valley, the little faraway town of Cadore glistens on its strange saddle-back ridge, watched over as of old by its castle on the higher slope above. Farthest of all, rising magnificently against the clear afternoon sky, the fine pyramidal mass of Monte Pera closes in the view. For light and shadow, for composition, for all that goes to make up a landscape in the grand style, the picture is perfect. Nothing is wanting, not even the foreground group to give its life, for here come a couple of bullock trucks across the bridge, as primitive and picturesque as if they had driven straight out of the 15th century. It is just such a subject as Poussin might have drawn and Claude have colored. At Domegge, about 3½ miles from Cadore, we come upon a village almost wholly destroyed a few months back by fire. It is now one mass of black and shapeless ruin, but it will not long remain so, for the whole population, men, women, and little children, swarm like bees about a burnt hive, casting away rubbish, carrying loads of stones, mixing mortar, and helping to rebuild their lost homes. New foundations and new walls are already springing up, and by this present time a second Domegge has doubtless risen on the ashes of the first. Lozzo, the next village, about 2 miles farther up the valley, was burnt down in just the same way a year or two ago, and is now most unpicturesquely new, solid, and comfortable. Perhaps to be burnt out is, on the whole, the best fate that can befall the inhabitants of any of these ancient timber-built hamlets, for their dwellings are then replaced by substantial stone-built houses. As it is, what with danger from fire and danger from bergfalls, the smaller Tyrolean paesi are by no means safe or pleasant places to live in, and may stand comparison in point of insecurity with Portici, Torre del Greco, or any others of the Vesuvian villages. Now the road, which has been very bad all the way from Cadore, slopes gradually down towards the bed of the torrent, passing within sight of the Lorenzago to the right, and under the impending precipices of Monte Cornon to the left. Mountain and village has each its legend. Lorenzago, picturesquely perched on one of the lower slopes on Monte Credola, claims to be the scene of the martyrdom of St. Florian, a popular Tyrolean saint whose intercession is supposed to be of especial efficacy in cases of fire, while Monte Cornon is said to derive its name from an incident in the history of Cadore thus related by Mr. Gilbert. Along the slopes above this gorge, in the war of 1509, a division of Maximilian's troops was cautiously advancing, when the notes of a horn, corno, broke suddenly from the misty mountainside. It was but a casual herdsman sounding, as is still the custom there at certain seasons, to warn off bears, but supposing themselves to be attacked by the Cadore people, panic seized the invaders, and they then fled the way they came, over the Santa Croce Pass to Sexton. Cadore, page 92. The same rustic horn, sounded for the same purpose, may be heard here on quiet autumn evenings to this day, what time the bears come prowling down to rob orchards in the valley, and it is remarkable that there are more bears in the district about Monte Cornon, Comelico, and the Gael Thal than in any other part of the Alps. A little way beyond the village of Loso, we cross the Piave and continue along the left bank as far as the point of junction with the Anzizi at Treponti, a famous triple bridge consisting of 3 bold arches, each 90 feet in span and all resting on a single central pier. To the left, winding away between richly wooded heights, lies the valley of Auronzo, while to the right the upper Piave, its grey waters shrunken to half their previous volume, come hurrying down a bare and stony channel from its source in the Carnic Alps. And now, having tracked it for many a mile of its long course, since first we saw it widening across the plain near Conegliano, we are to bid a last farewell to the Piave. It was not then very far from its grave in the Adriatic. It is now about as distant from its cradle in the fastness of Monte Paralba. A curious old historical writer, one Dottore Giorgio Piloni of Belluno, who evolved a dull book in a dull style just 160 years ago, speaks of the Piave not only as the largest and most important, but also as the most ancient river of the province, and seeks to identify it with the river Anesum, mentioned by Pliny in his chapter on the Venetian territory. He urges in proof of its antiquity the depth of its bed and the height of its banks, whereby, he says, it may plainly be proved that this Piave cannot be a new river, as in other instances one sees may happen by intervention of earthquakes and other accidents. The good doctor, when he wrote this, had evidently never visited the scene of the great bergfall in the gorge of Serravalle, or seen the basin of the Piave at Capo di Ponte. Taking the right bank of the Anziei, we now enter the Val d'Auronzo. The bad road which began at Cadore ends at Treponti, and once more the horses have a fine, new, broad post road beneath their feet. The sun by this time is dropping westward, the trees fling long shadows aslant the sloping sward, the gnats come out in clouds, and the air is full of evening scents and sounds. It has been a long day, and nearly 12 hours have gone by since we started from Cortina in the morning. How much longer have we yet to be upon the road before we reach Auronzo? Being asked this question, the driver, whose politeness is such that it never permits him to give a direct answer to anything, touches his hat with his whip handle, and replies that it is as the Signora pleases. Come le piace, Signora. But how many kilometers have we yet before us? He coughs apologetically. Kilometers? Con rispetta, it is by no means a question of kilometers. With horses like these, kilometers go for nothing. Ebbene, as a question of time then, how soon shall we be at Auronzo? In an hour? In an hour and a half? Before dusk? The driver shrugs his shoulders, looks round in a helpless way as if seeking some means of escape, touches his hat again, and stammers, Come le pace, Signora. Come le pace is the formula by which all his ideas are bounded. He has no opinions of his own. He would die rather than express himself with decision about anything. Ask him what you will, the name of a village, the hour of the day, the state of the weather, his own name, age, and birthplace, and he will inevitably reply, Come le pace. It is his invariable answer, and the effort to extract any other from him is sheer waste of breath. The distance, however, proves to be only 4 miles. In about half an hour from the Treponti we come to a bend in the road, and lo! there lies a large, rambling village straggling along near the bank of the Anziei, a big mosque-like church with a glittering white dome, an older-looking campanile peering above the brown roofs at the farther extremity of the place, and beyond all these a vista of valley threaded by a deep, dark torrent fringed with sullen pine-woods. It is not the village of Auronzo, however. It is not the valley, nor the torrent, nor the pine-woods that make the beauty and wonder of the view. It is the encircling array of mountain summits standing up rank above rank, peak beyond peak against the clear, pale evening sky. Farthest and strangest, at the remote end of the valley, rise the Drei Zinnen, now showing distinctly as 3 separate obelisks. A soft haze through which the sun is setting hangs over the distance, and the Drazinnen, belted by luminous bands of filmy horizontal cloud, look like icebergs afloat in a sea of golden mist. It is one of those rare and radiant effects that one may travel for a whole summer without seeing, and which, when they do occur, last but a few moments. Before we had reached the first cottages, the golden light was gone, and the vapours had turned grey and ghostly. Auronzo is divided into an upper and a lower village, known respectively as the Villa Grande and the Villa Piccola. Villa Piccola, which one reaches first on entering from the Tre Ponti side, is a modern suburb to Villa Grande. The houses of this modern suburb are large and substantial, reminding one of the houses at Ober Ammergau, and some are decorated in the same way with rough religious frescoes. To Villa Piccola belong both the large new church and the dome, and the albergo, a clean-looking house lying a little way back from the road on the left hand, close against the parsonage. Driving up to this inn, we find some 4 or 5 chaises and carettini drawn up in front of the house, a knot of men and women gathered round the door, faces of other men and women looking out from the upper windows, and an unwonted air of bustle and festivity about the place. The landlady, a hard-featured dame in rusty black, standing at the door with her arms akimbo, shakes her head as we draw up, and does not give Giuseppe time to speak. She cannot take us in, not she! Couldn't take the King of Italy if he came this evening. Impossible! She has a wedding party from Comelico, and her house is quite full. Ecco! There is another albergo higher up in Villa Grande. We shall probably find room there. If not, well, she can't say. She supposes we must go back the way we came. Giuseppe and the driver look blank. They mutter something in low voices about l'altro albergo, and my ear detects an ominous emphasis on the l'altro. The landlady purses up her mouth. The travellers in possession, in all their gayest holiday clothes, survey us with an insolent air of triumph. The coachman gathers up his reins, and we drive on, quite discomfited. With the scattered homesteads of Villa Piccola, the good road ends abruptly, and becomes a mere stony cart-track full of ruts and rubble. Then, all at once, we find ourselves in the midst of a foul, closely packed labyrinth of old timber houses, ruinous, smoke-blackened, dilapidated, compared with which the meanest villages we have as yet passed through are clean and promising. Here squalid children shout, and sprawl, and beg. Slatternly women lean from upper windows, and sullen, fierce-looking men lounging in filthy doorways stare in a grim, unfriendly way as the carriage lurches past. This is Villa Grande. Another moment, and turning a sharp corner, we draw up before a bare, desolate-looking house standing a little apart from the rest, with a walled-off bowling-ground on one side, in which some 6 or 8 men are playing at ball, and a score or 2 of others looking on. This is our albergo. We look at Giuseppe, at the house, at each other. "Is there no other place to which we can go for the night?" we ask, aghast. Giuseppe shakes his head. This and the inn at Villa Piccola are the only 2 in the place. If we do not stay here, we have no resource but to go back to Tea Cadore, a distance of at least 14, if not 15, English miles. At this crisis, out comes a tall, smiling, ungainly woman, with an honest face and a mouth full of large shining teeth, an anxious, willing, cheerful body, eager to bid us welcome, eager to carry any number of bags and rugs, brimming over with good-will and civility. She leads the way up an extremely dirty flight of stairs, across a still dirtier loft full of flour sacks, cheeses, and farming implements, and thence up a kind of step-ladder that leads to a landing furnished with the usual table and chairs, linen press, and glass cupboard. Opening off this landing are some 2 or 3 very bare but quite irreproachable bedrooms, with low, whitewashed walls, and ceilings about 7 feet from the ground. The floors, the bedding, the rush-bottomed chairs, are all as scrupulously clean as the lower part of the establishment is unscrupulously the reverse. Carpets and curtains, of course, there are none. What is wanting in personal comforts is made up for, however, in the way of spiritual adornments. The walls are covered with prints of saints and martyrs in little black frames, while over the head of each bed there hangs a colored lithograph of the Madonna, displaying a plump pink heart stuck full of daggers, and looking wonderfully like a Valentine. Here then we may take up our quarters and be at peace, and here upon the landing we are presently served with hot cutlets, coffee, eggs, and salad, all of very tolerable quality. While this meal is in preparation, we watch the players in the bowling ground. Our driver, having attended to his horses, strips off his coat and joins in the game. Giuseppe smokes his cigar and looks gravely on. By and by the dusk closes round, the players disperse, and we, who have to be upon the road again by 8:30 a.m., are glad to go to rest, watched over by our respective Madonnas. Whether seen by evening gray or morning sunshine, the upper village of Auronzo is as unprepossessing, disreputable-looking a place as one would care to become acquainted with, either at home or abroad. Rambling about next morning before breakfast, I saw nothing but dirt and poverty under their least picturesque aspect. The people looked sullen, scowling, and dissolute, and the houses overcrowded, the surrounding country not half cultivated. I afterwards learned that the commune was poor, in debt, and overpopulated, and that the inhabitants bore an indifferent reputation. It was pleasant enough at all events to drive off again in the cool, bright morning, our horses' heads turned once again toward the hills. And now, Auronzo being left behind, the scenery becomes grander with each mile of the way. Every opening gorge to right and left discloses fresh peaks and glimpses of new horizons. The pine slopes, last evening so gloomy, are outlined in sunshine this morning, and the torrent ripples along its bed of glittering white pebbles, like a blue ribbon with a silver border. The valley from this point looks like a cul-de-sac. The road runs up to the foot of a great barrier of stony debris at the base of Monte Giralba on the one side, and there, to all appearances, ends abruptly. Monte Rosiana, locally known as Monte Ruggiana, puts forth a gigantic buttress on the other, while the Col Agnello, a wild pile of peaks not far short of 10,000 feet in height, rises, an impassable barricade between the two. It is not till one has driven quite up to this point that the valley, instead of being hopelessly blocked, is found to turn off sharply to the left, narrowing to a mere gorge and winding round the western flank of Monte Rosiana. End of section 14.